Today, we're going to be talking about the keys to raising a good staff culture. We're going to talk about the power of having a proper hiring process and also some of the things you look for to know whether or not the staff actually care and believe in what you believe in, or if they're simply just there for a paycheck. I'm Dennis.
And I'm Greg.
And this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast,
where we provide the tools for more profit and less stress in your business now so you can turn into a valuable asset later. Welcome to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. I'm here with Dennis Taekema, my partner as usual. And today we want to hit on that subject. Why do great people leave your company, your team? And we're going to get into a bunch of different subjects today and a bunch of different things. But one word that's used a lot is the word culture. And like Dennis, you and I hear that word all the time. And so many people write books and do seminars about you got to have a great culture.
Culture also makes great cheese.
Right. There you go. Exactly. So like, what does it mean? Right. Like people are like, oh, you gotta have a great culture. Oh my God. Okay. I got to go get a great culture. Let's go get a great culture. But what does that mean? That's such an overlying generic word. And by the way, you're right. It describes stuff that goes in cheese. So like, what do you see? We'll get into some examples today. We can
talk about the signs of a bad culture. A bad culture is you're constantly dealing with staff turnover. People are always coming through, and you kind of have this revolving door effect of bringing people in, letting people go, bringing people in. And there is a very good piece of advice that says hire slow, fire fast. But you have to know why you're hiring slow and why you're firing fast. That's also different than if you can't hang on to people. Now, you might say, well, they're quitting because of not paying them enough. And that may be true for a small percentage of the people that you hire, but not for the vast majority of them. A second sign that you have a problem is that your staff just aren't performing. Well, I don't understand. They show up late every day. I'm paying them to do the job. They're not really coming in on time. They're leaving early. They only give half an effort. Well, yeah. So if they're not performing properly, you won't have a good culture. You have to also remember that your people aren't robots. You can't expect them to work at peak performance 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, whatever number of days you have them working plus overtime. People aren't designed to run marathons. In fact, if you look at all the studies on human performance, sprinters have the longest health. Marathon runners have the shortest. We're designed to sprint, not to marathon, but we expect somehow our staff is supposed to marathon every single day. Meanwhile, the owner themselves isn't really marathoning every single day. So, we can touch on a couple, but first of all, just so you're aware, if you have good culture, the opposites are true. You have low staff turnover. People aren't sticking around because they're paying them a certain amount of money. They're sticking around because they genuinely want to be there. In fact, I think, Greg, you were talking before that in some of your guys' past experience, either yourselves or working like at Sport Check and in those places, or you have even the store that you guys were part of, you guys had minimum wage workers that would not leave.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was, to your point, like comparing same business, same industry, roughly same size, doing roughly the same revenue. There's an example of a store that had a staff turnover of losing only like around 1.4 staff per year, which is crazy considering that was a situation where the staff were getting paid minimum wage because that's all the store could afford. Small store, small revenue, relatively like it wasn't a Costco, right? Or a big grocery store. So it could only afford so much per hour to cover the hours it needed to help the customers. So you do the calculation, figure out the wage you can afford. It was basically minimum wage or a little over. Yet that store, I'm going to go back to that story, but I want to set this up better. Like you and I meet business owners literally every day, talk to clients, and common terminology is, Dennis, like staff, like you got to deal with them, right? It's all their fault. It's crazy. And then they'll say, we hear this all the time, they'll say, well, my industry is different. Like it's so hard to keep staff because blah, 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 whatever reasons, right?
Or I'm always fixing their mistakes. So they're just not showing up on time, or they're taking random days off when I depend on them. Or
so when someone gives me but my industry is different and, because of this, and this, the staff turnover is high, I always go back with, okay, I want you to compare your situation to a retail store that can only afford to pay minimum wage, which means the staff's younger. Do you think you'll have more or less staff turnover than them? And there's no way they can look me in the eye and say their staff turnover should be higher than that situation. Because that situation, like a retail store that pays minimum wage, young staff, that is the highest possible staff turnover situation you could probably walk into.
Young staff, no skills, high volume of people that can work that job.
Yeah.
People are leaving all the time.
Yeah. And they're looking for the next best thing at 10 cents an hour more or whatever. Well, that situation, that store had 1.4 a year, which is insane because the average staff count was give or take 8, say, or 7, or depending on the type of staff.
One every couple months.
So super low staff turnover, like 1 a year. That's, if you have 8 staff, that's like you're using 1.5 of those, losing 1.5 of those a year. That's all you got to replace. That's low stress. That's awesome.
It's actually low cost too, because you're not investing all of that extra in training.
Exactly. Right? Customers happier, staff are trained better, which leads to higher average transaction, leads to better conversion rates, leads to doing the job more efficiently, which I'll get to in a minute. Doing the job more efficiently, therefore you don't need as many staff hours to get all the jobs done. So now your wages are a lower percentage of revenue. So then you take another store, same situation, and they're literally 50%. They're spending 50% more on wages. Why? Go look at the staff turnover number. Staff turnover, I think it was something like 10 or 12 a year. So now you're like 10 to 12 times the staff turnover. You're losing the staff member every single month, which is crazy. Your whole staff turns over in like 6 to 8 months. So that equals, to the point, less efficiency, more training hours, or customer satisfaction. You get less done each hour worked because they're not as skilled. Therefore, your wages are higher as a percentage of revenue. So it's massive. And again, that was a situation where it should have been awful and it wasn't. And it all comes down to today's discussion, culture subject, right? Like, what is culture? What does it mean?
Why would those people not leave when everybody else is leaving? What makes the difference if everything else is all the same? That's what you're getting at, right? If everything's the same. Why does one person stick at a place for 5-6 years, but another place they won't stick around for 5-6 days?
100%. And one thing like you and I in our program coach business owners to do is when you're hiring somebody, there's a lot of things to look at, but a filter to put them through of 3 things. And it's not 1, 2, and 3 because the 2 first ones are equally as important. The third one is the third reason. So it's like 1A, 1B, and then number 3. And the first 2 in no particular order are: 1, do they take pride in everything they do in life? Like not just pretend to take pride in work. And just an example of that is like, I know I bought my first house when I was like 21 years old. And to be honest, couldn't afford to own it. Like it was a super big stretch. So I had to get 2 roommates. Well, I didn't want to live in a shit show. So everybody's like, oh my God, guys in their young 20s, let's go live in a party house, right? This is going to be great. I'm like, sure, but I ain't living in a shit show mess. So my process was come to the house. We'll talk about, does it make sense? We live together. Are we a good fit? And then right at the end, I'm like, hey, did you drive here? Yep. Let's walk out to your car. I'd walk out and I'd just look in the window. And if the car's a shit show, no effing way you're living in my house. Ain't happening, because the way you do that's the way you're going to do this. So back to the point, hiring somebody as a business owner, you got to be good at in the interview figuring out how to decide, do they take pride in everything they do in life? And we could spend lots of time on that. We won't. Second filter is, do they have a passion for the purpose you solve? So back to that store example, the purpose was helping pets live longer, happier lives through optimizing their health. Well, if they got a passion for that and you get into a conversation, you can see them light up and get passionate and awesome. But if they don't, then why would you hire them? Because back to your point, your question was, why do they stay? They stay because they believe in the purpose you're solving and they want to do that and it lights their fire. And then the third thing to look for was, oh yeah, do they have the skill set? But most companies put that first. So if you got a skill set, you don't take pride in what you do, you don't have passion for the purpose the company solves, you're not going to stay.
Well, it's like, are you a welder for the paycheck? Or are you a welder because you genuinely love welding? Why'd you get into it?
Sorry, I live in a neighborhood, like for sure, more than 75% of the people around here are retired. I could hit a golf ball in every direction, and that circle, there's at least 6 or 8 retired guys who love welding as a hobby of what they can create. They're creating all sorts of stuff. So they love it, right? To your point.
And you'll find in every industry, you've got people that either love to be there or don't. So what's the first thing in building a good culture? Number 1, do you know what your business actually does? Do you actually frame houses, or are you building places that people want to live? Are you doing renovations, or are you building people's dreams? Are you welding pipe, or are you securing transportation of dangerous goods? Your motivation for why you do what you do. Am I a business coach, or do I firmly believe in changing people's lives with the information that I give them? Your motivation for why your business exists has to be transferable to the staff to believe it for themselves too, because if they believe in your business's purpose and they align with that purpose, you're in the first steps you're going to need to be to establishing that culture. And if you've got somebody on board who's your most skilled employee, but is not following that purpose, is making everybody's life hell, you have to get rid of that person to protect the culture, because the business can't move forward with what I call morale cancer. So why does your business exist? Like, actually think about it. You could have done a million different things with your life, but you picked the business that you're in. Why? What motivates you for it? What gets you out of bed every day? And have you communicated that effectively to the people that you're bringing on board? And do they believe it too? I think you had a great example of this in our conversation before about, I should know the guy's name, the football player, the quarterback, the guy that you hate because he'd win so many Super Bowls. Tom Brady, right? Yeah. How Tom Brady actually turned down higher levels of paychecks because he wanted to win championships. He didn't just want to get paid a lot of money.
Bottom line, football is a business. So if you're a football team or any sports team, but if you're a football team business owner, you have manager, coach, whatever, and they do a hiring process and you're picking players. I hear all the time from just people in the world, hey, that athlete on that team was all about winning championships. Sorry, I call BS on almost all of them, because when their contracts come up, they all try and negotiate the top dollar, which tells me, because most sports have a salary cap, you can only spend so much money. That tells me that player isn't about winning championships, they're about the money. And that's fine. That's their choice, right? That's their choice.
And you can be,
but
sure.
Yeah, but don't tell me that player was all about winning championships when their actions don't say that. Brady, love him or hate him, and obviously, like I said before, I didn't like him because he kept beating my favorite team, which held us back from winning Super Bowls. But to his credit, he's the only professional team player that I know of intimately, and there might be more, that I can say without question, he was about winning championships, because he always took a lower contract and told the team, take the extra money and pay other great players to join me so we can win championship. To the point of your example is, there's an example of a player that if you did a hiring process and you're like, I only want players that want to win championships, what is your process to determine if that's true? So, and I'll give one more example to drive it home. If you're pro sports team, are they willing to take a lower contract to join a team that they think is going to win a championship? Because that's what they want, the ring. Different example of that is back to that store example I gave. So the purpose of a sports team is to win championship. Got it. And you want to have a selection process to define who those people are that want to join that team. Purpose of what your business is, you got to decide. But this other business was helping pets live longer lives, longer, happier lives. If that's the purpose, how do you figure out if that's truly something they're passionate about and that's what they want? Because they could say it. So as an example, that business created a little scenario on one page of a study that was done. I won't get into the study, but it basically was, if you care about pets' health and you read this, you would have got really pissed off and visibly upset. Annoyed. And yeah, big time. So, but if you read that and went, oh, that's interesting. Interview over. So that was an example of a selection process. So if you're a business owner, what does yours look like to determine if that's the case? Like truly, and they're not just telling you what you want to hear.
Well, it's actually, I think, one of the things that we teach in our program as well. A massive thing that helps you build your culture is a hiring process that's a deselection process. Our entire hiring process that we teach our clients to follow is about deselecting the majority of the bad people so you can actually narrow down it to the few that are the right people. And of all the clients who've run this thing effectively, I think the first time they run it, they have about a 90% chance of finding the correct player the first time, because our process ignores all of the stuff that most people look at, which is resumes and history and skill sets and all of that stuff. And it really dives into who the character of the person is that you're trying to hire. So a good culture has a deselection process, not just a selection process. And on that point, like, you have different mechanics. You got some shops whose entire process is to hire a part swapper. Greg, you're just here to swap parts. Stop complaining. Stop bitching. Go swap the parts. That's what I pay you for. That is one type of mechanic, and they're out there. I took my car to a dealership one time, and when I picked it up, there was a note on my dashboard from the guy that fixed the car who said, hey, by the way, I wanted you to know I fixed your car. I also looked over it for you because if I wanted to know if my spouse or my kids were driving, that everything was going to be good. And everything checks out. So like it completely changed the way I viewed that business, because that guy was a mechanic not to swap parts. He was a mechanic because he believed in the mission, which for him was making sure nobody got hurt on a car that he fixed. And I have to believe it was more than just an insurance reason. Otherwise he wouldn't have left the note, right? So a lot of our clients that go through, well, what is culture? Culture is a place I want to show up every day to solve the purpose that the business is trying to solve with the people I want to do it with. I've got a friend of mine who when I was younger, drilled it into my head that he does not hang out with the people he works with. They're not friends. They're just people he worked with. And I harbored that mentality for a while. And then I came to the conclusion of, why should I hate the people I work with when I got to spend 8 hours to 9 hours a day with them? Why wouldn't I want these to be the same people that if they're going to Vegas, I'd want to go along too? Or if they're taking a weekend with family, I'd want to hang out with them too. That your culture should have that environment where these guys, girls, whoever, want to hang out with each other when they're not working. Now you know you have a community of people that believe the same thing and are connected together to solve that mission.
Love it. That leads to Dennis's point. If you want that, if you own a business and you have team members that care, like he's talking about, and some of them start to tell you about signs of a bad apple in the barrel, this is a sure thing. You, the owner, the boss, when you hear about bad apples, you start to hear stuff. This is absolutely for sure. You are hearing the tip of the iceberg. There is 10 times more than that happening, and a lot of it the staff knows about, but they're always afraid to kind of go talk to the boss about it. They don't want to rat their teammate out. They don't want to sound like a complainer. They don't want to sound like they're whatever, right? This is for sure thing you can absolutely count on. When you start to hear stuff, it's the tip of the iceberg. Deal with it now. Go deal with it. Go talk to staff, investigate, talk to customers if you have to, and then go deal with it. If it's repairable, repair it. And your staff will respect you for finding something that's not working, giving that person another chance and fixing it. Yeah, exactly. That adds to the culture, right? They think that you have their back. But if it's not repairable, you've got to make a decision. You got to make it fast. Back to the thing Dennis said, hire slow, fire fast. Because if you don't, now everything you've talked about with culture and team and support each other and perform and all those things, the staff now think you're full of it because you've got an example of a problem and you aren't willing to deal with it. And now the staff they check out. Now they don't believe because now you don't care. Big deal for sure.
Which is what we briefly mentioned before about even if that person that's causing the problem is your A player, you got to be able to get rid of them. I know of a business particularly that I was an employee for where their best, most educated player was the worst for morale. And the owner refused to get rid of them because the knowledge this particular person had, they felt was key to their business working. But in the process, drove away 4 really talented employees. And myself being one of them, that I'll let them argue whether or not that was the talent portion. But 4 people left because of one person's destruction of the culture. So if you want to get into a position where your business is semi-passive actual income and you're not actively there every day, how are you taking care of the staff that are there? I know a lot of people say customers come before staff. My attitude is staff comes before customers. If your staff isn't well taken care of, not just financially, but emotionally, all of that stuff, then they're not going to do the best for the customer and they're not going to believe in this mission that you've told them that they're on, because if you believed in the mission, you'd believe in the team members that are on board with you to accomplish that mission.
Absolutely. So for a lot of business owners, you're like, well, nobody does as good as me. Okay, we get that.
But that's also a problem, by the way.
Right. So to accomplish what Dennis just said, focus that passion for doing everything properly on micromanaging the system. So call it the routine that your team follows. Micromanage that routine and then support and let the team know you are supporting them to succeed in that system. So if they need anything, they need training, they need reassurance. And they need like a checklist or training or a whatever, a tool or a different thing or a different computer or desk, whatever it happens to be. Show them you'll support them in following that routine to succeed. And then they'll stay. They'll know you care, you believe, and you'll create that environment where, like Dennis said, you don't need to be there every day all the time. And a great example of that is we have a client that literally had someone as a virtual assistant working with her for quite a while that knew all the systems, had the passion, but just couldn't get the skills dialed. So she had to make a decision for this person to move on because it was hurting the company and the other staff were seeing it. So she makes the decision to move on. She uses the hiring process you were referring to and hires somebody fantastic. Like, this person's got passion, awesome, great skill set, fast in the training because the system was there for the training. So they just followed the system, and this client supported them through that. And this person was unbelievable. All this client would say is how great this decision was. And literally 6 months later, this person calls the business owner and says, really bad news. My husband needs me to work for his company and do this, 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 and this. So I got to go do that full time. And where most business owners would be depressed and go home and, oh my God, the world's ending. How am I going to find somebody else? The client actually said, which is blew my mind, said, I'm happy for her and her family, and I know I'm going to find somebody just as good, and ran the hiring process and found somebody actually, she says, is better. That's actually better. If you build those things, that's where you can get to. That's the situation you can live versus, oh, I just got this person almost trained and now I got to start over again. I can't go on a vacation. I'm going to work nights, or I got to cover their shifts. Like, it's always depressing. You can be the opposite of that.
Well,
so it's there.
And with that good culture, the team looks after each other, right? If somebody's got to take a time off, someone else will step up. There's no attitude of this is somebody else's problem. And even as your business grows, your job is to take more along the role of a personal trainer than you are to take the role of the employee yourself. Your job is to come alongside them and make sure they're not hurting themselves when they're bench pressing. They're not taking shortcuts on the system to follow the process, to refine the systems, to look at the numbers, to keep an eye on things. If you're not in a position where you can do that, I would say, number one, look at your personal systems that you're following. But number two, look at actually how you're building in what you want them to do. And are you actually attracting the right people to do it because you're clear on what you want? Or is it just, I'm in business to make money. I'm here for myself. And the staff picks up on the concept of they're going to feel like the boss makes $1, so they make a dime, so they're going to crap on company time. Like, you get the culture that you're putting out there. So examine what you're doing first and find out what you actually stand for and what you want to achieve. And then it becomes a lot easier to get everybody else on board to do the same thing. And it becomes a lot easier to spot the bad apples. And it becomes a lot easier for people to want to be there for the long period of time. You'd be amazed at what employees are willing to do if they understand why they're doing it, they believe in the reason to do it, and they're on board with the reason to do it.
Yeah, I love it. Boy, you made me think of two things there real quick. One, if you do a good job of all that, your team will want other good people they know in their life to come work for you. They'll recruit. Your customers will recruit because your customers will be like, oh, my brother, my sister, my son, daughter, whatever, love to work in a place like this, or my best friend or whatever. They'll recruit for you. It's awesome. Love it. And then the only other piece of advice, and I just say this because I grew up in this kind of business environment, create events or situations outside work. And even at the end of the day, end of the workday once a month or something, where the team gets to kind of spend some time together, has some fun doing something, and build relationship other than just work. And don't be afraid to have them invite their significant other, whatever, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever. Create that, because then if the culture's right, they're going to want to hang out with each other. And if they want to hang out with each other, it creates a desire that they don't want to leave. And that is part of the reason why that one example I gave where the turnover was 1.4 staff a year, that was a big part of that. It was creating a culture where we would have them at our house once every month or 6 weeks and do like a games night and just have them all.
And it wasn't paid and it wasn't required.
Yeah. And if any of them are watching this, I need to be transparent and admit this. We always did guys against the girls in the games. And in 8 years, I don't think the guys won once. Sad. Like, so hard. We got killed every time. But it created a fun environment. They all wanted to, and even the significant others wanted to join, and and they all hang out. And don't be afraid to do that as a business, but do it authentically. Don't fake it. Yeah.
You'll know if your culture is there when people aren't saying, okay, yeah, we're doing a games night, but is it paid? Well, if that's the reason why you want to be there, then you haven't built it yet.
Yeah, we never got that question. Yeah.
People have to authentically want to be there. I actually even encourage clients when they're running the hiring process, especially if they're smaller, involve your current staff, because these are the people that they're going to be bringing into their lives and friendship circles too. So if there's somebody during the hiring process that rubs them the wrong way, you're doing yourself a pretty big disservice to hire that person anyway. So trust your staff as well. If they really want to be there and they feel included in the process, everybody's rowing in the same direction. It's a whole lot easier to make a business grow than if you're dealing with high turnover every couple of months because guys are leaving for a bigger paycheck or girls are leaving because they can find a different opportunity somewhere else. And if people just aren't showing up on time for work and they're just there for the paycheck, then your whole hiring process was wrong to begin with.
And if you do what Dennis just said, then your team will take more ownership and accountability to help the person that they help choose succeed, which is awesome. Yeah. They won't see him as a threat, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my clients just went to do some hiring, and their top performer, their best guy, never wanted to train people because it would slow down his production. So the guy said to him, if it slows down your production, I'll compensate you for the difference, but I need you to train. This guy who he had training is the only employee in history to make more money while training without being compensated for it. Meaning his training went so well of the new employee, his production went up with the new trainee. Right. Where everybody else, when they train, their production goes down because of the way they train. So even when you have a dialed in culture, you can figure out who's doing the best at what they're doing, and they become the trainer instead of you, and they'll probably teach things that you won't teach. And at least that way, when new people are starting, the bad habits aren't buried in there. And then what I found the most interesting was this new hire is now his second best performer. So he spent the time training with the best. He's now the second best performer. So now you have people that have been longer going, well, why are you so much better than me?
Yep.
And it's all because the culture is united for where they're trying to go.
Love it.
Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform and leave a comment or review if you're feeling generous. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, take care.